Parents of Reddit, what is the worst thing you have ever done in front of your teenage kid? Hope this qualifies. With our daughter away at college, the wife and I would take advantage of many situations to do the bump. One day I came home from work and I heard a shower running. I went into the bathroom and reached inside the shower curtain and pinched her butt. All of a sudden I hear this voice say, "What the frick, dad?" Apparently our daughter decided to come home for the weekend unannounced. I think I was more fricked up over it than she was. No. Oh my gosh. How hilariously awful. I haven't drunk much alcohol over the last 10 years, but about 3 years ago I had a few too many. Kids were 13 and 16. We'd gone to a relative's barbecue which was walking distance from home. Hadn't planned on drinking, but that's the way the night went. Eldest went home early, so the boy and I wandered back after midnight. I remember play fighting with them in the living room. The next thing I remember is being in bed feeling sick. I was sick where I lay and tried to get up but couldn't, and thought, well, I've messed the bed up already, I may as well just carry on here. Then I got up to have a shower. Opposite end of the house. Kids woke up. I didn't have a towel, so I ran back through to my room in the booth and collapsed on the floor. I woke up hours later. The kids had covered me up, stripped and cleaned my bed, washed all my sheets, dried them and remade my bed. I still bring it up. Remember when mum was drunk and threw up over herself? Yeah, don't talk about all the times I wasn't drunk and was being a good mum, eh? I like to think of it as a deterrent. Good to hear that they took care of you while you were out cold and sick on the floor. That was really sweet of them. I was a college freshman and had come home for winter break, and the boyfriend had just flown in to visit. He was going to meet my parents for the first time ever. I was out giving him a tour of my hometown when I got a call from my dad. All he said was, "Pumpkin, get back the house and check out this big butt fire I made." I drove us home after he spam called me 4 more times and kept yelling about how cool the fire was. I rarely ever saw my dad drink when I was growing up. He'd always been hyper responsible and straight-laced. He's exactly like Hank Hill, except with a different southern accent, and he's a nerdy electrical engineer instead of a propane salesman. I came home to find my dad and his brother blackout drunk, stumbling around a huge bonfire in the backyard looking for more sticks to throw in the pit, holding their own half-empty bottles of whiskey, and wearing matching cowboy hats. I have no idea where they got the cowboy hats. My then boyfriend introduced himself, and instead of asking him about how his flight was, how school is going, where we went that afternoon, or any of the normal pleasantries you'd ask your daughter's boyfriend, my dad blurts out, "Have I ever told you all about the one and only time I ever did see?" He launched into a story about how he did lines of coke in a hot tub with the local weather lady at a community theater cast party in the 80s. Then he and my uncle spent hours telling us crazy crap they did before my cousins and I were born. And then they called my future husband a P for not doing whiskey shots. If there's one thing straight-laced Hank Hill types love, it's building fires. Going to a movie with my 15-year-old. Getting out of the car, I turn just wrong and twinge my back. She asks what's wrong and I say I threw my back out humping your mom last night. She is looking at me like a deer in headlights, and I cannot stop laughing, which incidentally did not help my back. By God, she has a family. Savage. Went to my 12-year-old son's end of season dinner for his sports team. Just an informal get together at a local family pizza place on a Friday night. One of the parents brought multiple cases of wine with him. Wine salesman. And we all went a bit nuts. I don't drink much these days, so it hit me extra hard. Apparently when we were walking home I was hiding in the bushes, then leaping out at random people pretending to be a Nosferatu type vampire and hissing at them. Hissing. My poor kid was mortified. Peas, I'm a hobbit-sized woman, so the people passing weren't scared by me, just bemused annoyed. Peas, I'm a hobbit-sized woman, so the people passing weren't scared by me, just bemused annoyed. A hobbit-sized woman leaping out of the bushes and hissing like a vampire would still be fairly frightening. When I was 13 or 14, my mom was deep into her M addiction, but I didn't realize at the time. One night I had my best friend over and my mom brought us, along with my little brother who was 4ish, with to pick up money from my stepdad. After we get there and she runs in, she comes back out and hands something to my friend and asks her to put it in her bra until we get home, since she was driving without insurance and a suspended license. We get home. Friend gives it back. We forget about it. Anyway, 10 years later we realize my mom had actually given her the M to hold on to in case she was pulled over and searched or arrested. So that was something. The worst thing I could think of was my dad yelling at some guy that stole a parking space he was waiting for. This thread makes me appreciate having such a good childhood. Not a parent, but my boyfriend in high school was having a friend stay over and he forgot something at home and he went in to grab it and walked in on an orgy. We all felt so bad for that kid, like, oh god. What? Friend's mum in HS used to get drunk, pop pills, sometimes hurt herself, on purpose or just from falling downstairs, nearly every night. He wasn't in a good place. I used to tell him I wanted to come and watch TV at his place because his TV was better, but it was just so he had someone to help whilst he inevitably called the ambulance or police. Sometimes she would wander off. She eventually sorted herself out and became an amazing grandmother, and I got to watch a crap ton of music videos on the nights when she stayed drunk in her room. I miss the 80s. You're a good friend. As my mum is near incapable of using a computer, I'll share on her behalf. One night she got ridiculously drunk and came home. She called me from her bedroom and said she had something to show me, and I reluctantly go to her. She's in her bedroom holding a thick translucent purple vibrator and she says to me in slurred speech, "This is what mummy uses when she's lonely." To do this day I don't know WTF she was thinking when she did this. Ouch. I got caught masturbating. Didn't hear them coming. They threw open the shower curtain to prank me. Couldn't look him in the eye for a week. Friend was the parent. Found him in complete shock, saying he was trying to stay calm, but knowing he'd just messed up with his teenage daughter. Before breakfast at the start of what was going to be a non-stop busy day, he decided to shoot a foreplay text at his girlfriend about some kinky thing he was going to do to her that night. At the table he decided to sneak it in while his daughters went into the kitchen to grab the food. Only he accidentally sent it to one of them, and it notified on her phone as they were walking back to the table. He said the girl sat, and the one asked why he just texted her. He said as he quizzically watched her eyes process what she read, look at him with betrayal, and then his heart slammed to a stop. He realized what happened too late, or he said he would have dove across the table and knocked the phone out of her hand. Cue a profuse apology and long address to men, tearful questions about how daddy wasn't lying that every man should respect women. It's just that some women want to have certain things done and said when it's only supposed to be a private matter between two consenting adults. She now is over it, but from then on he went from being her hero to just an any man. Edit, for clarity. She now is over it, but from then on he went from being her hero to just an any man. Ouch. Kinda funny. When I was about 12, my mom threw a wooden cutting board at my stepdad. He dodged it, and the cutting board obliterated some super fancy antique set of spice storage jars my mom held dear to her heart. This was, of course, my stepdad's fault. My 79-year-old grandmother had sex with my mom's childhood friend in the kitchen of her house and my mom walked in on them. It disturbed my mom and she said that my grandma's wig was coming off. I don't even know you, but I feel like I have to cut ties with your family. This happened to my husband. We had a whole gaggle of teenage kiddos over at our house one Friday night. My husband had a few beers and then snuck off behind the garage to have a smoke. He doesn't smoke in front of me since I quit. He had bummed a really strong cig and it made him super dizzy. Just as he was keeling over, a group of teenagers came along the path just in time to see him fall over onto the lawnmower. He pretended to be getting ready to mow, which made them howl with laughter. They still talk about that time dad fell and tried to cover it up by saying he was going to mow at 11 PM. Let us know when he starts watering the yard at 5 AM because then we will know he is truly an old man. We had guests around. The children all had gifts, and the eldest was just being a freaking tea in the way that teenage girls can be. Being a grumpy crap, moaning about everything. Everything was unfair. Her sisters had better whatever than she did, embarrassing herself and me, and my wife was just humoring her to make the evening go smoother and to not fall out. Two visitors, who live abroad, wanted a photograph, and my eldest threw a proper strop about it, and I snapped and told her to stop being such a freaking tea. I have worried about that moment most days, for about 5 years, worrying that I am a terrible father. Then I came to this thread and feel like goddamned hero compared to most of these stories. Best thread ever for me. Update. When I wrote best thread ever for me, I meant that it made me feel better about myself, but this is on its way to actually being my top comment, which has freaked me out a little, if I am honest. Update 2. Okay, now it is the biggest comment I ever made and the third biggest thing I ever posted. I am bemused, but vaguely pleased, I guess. Again, kid not a parent. When I was 13, my stepdad was an alcoholic. He was the kind who everyone knew had a problem but would always console my mom with stories about how he's getting better and not to worry. While I'm coming home from school that fateful afternoon, I walk in the door and my mom gets up from the couch, starts a beeline straight towards me all while screaming, "What did you do?" To my only remark was, "I have no idea." She gets right up in my face and starts to blame me for all the alcohol missing from the basement. We had a decent stash. The bottles were all empty and she had just now noticed that this hadn't always been the case. Apparently my stepdad was the first on her blame list for this. However, per the aforementioned consoling, she believed him when he told her it wasn't him and went on to blame her 13-year-old son for drinking upwards of 10 handles of hard liquor. I lost a lot of respect for my parents that day. That was 12 years ago. My mom still thinks I did it. They've since gotten a divorce. I still love my mom, but I'm very aware of her mental abilities and cognition. This breaks my heart. I'm so sorry. I woke up at night to grab some food. As I walked to the stairs, I saw my dad crawling naked on the stairs making sounds like Tarzan on its way to my mom. Never watched Tarzan again. What? When I was like 12, I was spending the night at a friend's house. I started feeling sick around midnight, so I went to ask his dad, who usually stayed up playing video games on their PC, to call my parents to come pick me up. When I walked out, he was furiously beating his meat with some generic as frick pee on the monitor. I decided to just go back to bed. It's not that I think having a wank is bad, but when your kid has their 12-year-old friend over, maybe postpone that crap, or do it in a room with a lock or a door. My 27-year-old husband in this past year has walked in on his grandparents having sex. His brother has walked in on them. Their cousin has walked in on them. Old people are wild. I am a parent, but my kids are still really little, so this story isn't about them. I teach 8th graders, 13-15-year-olds depending on their birthday. I am normally a history teacher, but this past year I also taught English. I was trying to think of a way of explaining writing a 5-paragraph essay. You have your introduction, 3-paragraph body, and conclusion. After I explained that, I said, think of it like a sandwich. You can't leave out your bun or you are just left holding your meat. I was horrified. I think I will stick to teaching history. That way I can ask them why they are giggling when I teach them about Watergate and my slideshow says Deep Throat. Hot for teacher begins playing in the background. I drank way too much whiskey one night when my son was about 10 or 11. Woke up to take a leak and stood in front of his Xbox and just started pee. Allegedly, I have no memory of this. He said he yelled at me to stop, but I just glared at him. Crap, I am so late to the party. But my dad always tells the story of when he was 6 or 7 and his father, my grandpa, came home from a rowdy night of drinking. My dad says my grandpa sidled slowly into the kitchen with a rope in his hand, and my grandma, who was sitting at the kitchen table, asked what he had done. He then led a miniature pony into the kitchen. The pony was named Speedy. He bit like a mother and would never let anyone ride him, and one day he ran off. They lived around a lot of farmland, so we like to think someone took him in and got the devil out of him. TBH, I thought you were gonna say some crap like hanging someone or about to lasso your grandma and hog tie her. Good story though. LOL. Geez, this thread is either my parents fricked in front of me or my abusive dad tried to kill my mom in front of me and my mom threatened to commit suicide in front of me. And usually the latter involves alcohol addiction. My husband left us when my daughter was 9. I was single until last year when left she high school and went to college. When she was 15 she was supposed to be staying the night at a friend's house, so I had a friend of my own over. We got a little drunk and started hooking up on the couch, and I got his pants down and he had the biggest rig I've ever seen in person. I went down on him. And then my daughter came home early because her friend got sick. She walked in on me with this guy's giant penis in my mouth and went, "Mom, what the frick? Holy crap," and ran out of the room. We were all mortified. Oh my god, I hope she is on Reddit and sees that her mom said it was the biggest rig she's ever seen. Late, but funny. My girlfriend's dad came home late after a night of drinking when she was a kid. Didn't know my girlfriend was having her friends for a sleepover. He stumbled in her room to give her a kiss goodnight and tripped over a cot in the middle of her room. He was confused as to why it was there, so he did the nice dad thing of putting her cot away for her. Turns out there was a teenage girl sleeping in said cot that got folded up. Makes for good storytelling. My mom was a very mild alcoholic. At least she was a happy drunk. Anyway, when I was about 9 it was her 40th birthday party. My parents threw big parties for the 0s. So they had a tent out in the backyard and all their friends were over, and after about 4 hours of heavy drinking and catered food it's time to start opening the gifts. My mom opens the one from my band teacher. They were good friends and later my sister and I decided she was having an affair with him at the time. And it's a music box which my mom loves full of condoms. I guess my dad had just gotten a vasectomy at the time, and so as a rebuttal my mom decides to bring down the collar of her already low cut shirt and flashes the entire audience. I went to bed after that. TLDR, don't whip your tea out in front of your kids. Edit. Oh yeah, and my parents drove drunk with us in the car a lot when we were kids. Like every single weekend for about 14 years. That was a fun realization. I'm not following your mother's thought process here. I farted really loudly and it smelled. Daughters outdo me nowadays, but I plan to be incontinent when I reach my 80s and live with one them. Playing the long game. I've already picked the kids who gets me. Payback is lovely. Okay, I am a parent with a host of stupid things done, but my oldest is only 8 now. But I am a scout leader regularly dealing with our teenage rover scouts, D. And at our clubhouse we got a parking problem with our neighboring gardening club. So when one particular nasty neighbor yet again parked in our spots, we might have put whistles in her exhaust pipe and laughed madly when she drove away, and all those whistles actually worked as intended. And all that in front of quite a few rover scouts. Yeah, that wasn't really showing a good example, and we did tell them that. Kinda. We just couldn't keep our faces straight anymore, ha 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 ha. This is so pure compared to the other things in this thread. I screamed at a bee who almost hit me. We were walking through the parking lot and it was bright at. I've got 3 girls so I watch cars pretty carefully. I ushered my girls in front of me and started walking again, and this car literally brushed the whole length of the car across my back and butt. I punched her car and screamed at her. She could have killed one of my kids and pretty obviously just quickly pulled out without looking. I then realized she was on her phone and started swearing and yelling even more. She then sped out of the parking lot and I felt bad for setting a bad example for my kids. Also, my hand hurt from hitting her car. If it's any consolation, I don't think anyone blames you for responding like that. My little guy was about 1 year old. He loved playing with dupless. They are just big Legos for toddlers. We'd build stuff together almost every day with his dupless. One day, I was high on M, and when I'm on M, I don't like to interact with anyone. I was freaking around on my computer all day, occasionally hiding in the bathroom to take a hit or two, then coming back out to my computer. And I've got the TV on Nick Jr. to babysit for me so the kid will leave me alone. Now it's 9 PM and I'm gonna put the kid to bed, and I think to myself how nice it will be with him asleep, cause I'll be free to lerp out on my computer and maybe jerk off or something once he's in bed. I stand up from my computer desk and say to the kid, "Okay, buddy," and he looks at me, grabs a Duplo block and smiles and runs to me all excited because he believes I'm going to finally actually play with him for the first time today. But nope, he was wrong. I was just putting him in bed so I could keep acting like a REM addict without the guilt of ignoring my kid. That may not have been the last time I used, but it was one of the last. The kid is 6 now and I haven't touched the stuff since he was 1. And I make time for him every single day. Nobody is born a great parent, but choosing to be better for your kids is how you become one. When your son is older, He is going to look back and truly appreciate all the time you spend with him. Got me addicted to painkillers at the age of 13, then continued to feed them to me till age 18. After a few crappy years and many attempts to get clean, I'm 26 and have now been clean for almost 2 years. Edit. Thank you for all the kind words to those I didn't reply to. It's the little things like that help too. Grats on your sobriety. I'm so happy to see you beat it instead of going down the road to H. I've lost so many friends over the last 3 years it's almost hard to keep track. Keep up the good work and enjoy your life without the opiate chains. My mum used to tell me she was gonna kill herself and she wanted me and everyone else to know it would be my fault. All a bit messed up really. I'm glad you know it is messed up, instead of blaming yourself in the screwed up way she intended. Not the worst thing in life, but I do get a little angry behind the wheel. I was driving with my son and when other drivers do incredibly inconsiderate or just plain stupid things, I feel the overwhelming need to see who the F this person is. I slam my horn and sometimes hit the gas a bit to catch up and overtake them, give them a look, or shout at them, often through a closed window. Now my son isn't, has always been, as many kids, observant. We'd watch shows together and ever since he was small, I'd notice him watch me laugh, then look back at the TV, then back at me. He was building an internal library of what humor was. In the same sense, I see him observing me on the road and I can't help but feel ashamed at my anger and response to it. I need to be better for my boy's sake. I'll comment on my ex-BF behalf. When his sister turned 16, she has a party hosted at her 50-year-old mum's house. Her mum got drunk and hooked up with one of the 16-year-old's male friends. She told me and my ex this on a visit to England, giggling like it wasn't a disgusting, horrifying story. As a teen, my dad would go off on me over tiny things and kick me out of the house, only to come and try to pick me up 10 miles down the road. Yup, my mother and father would throw me out of the house every few weeks, tell me to leave until I learned not to argue with them. I'd go, knowing full well not to walk too far because my mother would call at 2-4 AM, scared and furious that I hadn't come back home. You get used to it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.